All right, thank you very much. And boy, that's my worst nightmare, following Collier. What an awesome presentation. Um, I'm an experienced project manager. Hi, everybody. I'm going to use the role title project manager and product manager interchangeably, but I'll probably say project manager more often. That's my background. And pre-LLMs, I'd ship some AI systems into production, usually working with developer teams or building something small myself. I'm not a coder, but I would muscle through some little algorithm that would do something pretty cool and pretty powerful. So it was, again, pre-LLMs, it was some heavy lifting to try to get these systems to get trusted by the organizations that I was shipping them into. And that still is a problem. This sort of is calling back to Anupama's presentation earlier. This is another perspective on why AI has such a hard time getting into production reliably. And in my opinion, the constraint is not so much the model, RAG accepted, but the organizational approach. So I'm going to talk about the organizational approach. We're still early and learning which patterns work. So I just wanted to cover some patterns that should increase odds that your particular AI systems may be able to get shipped into production and not get blocked. So you build a model, it works perfectly in your notebook, 95% accuracy, clean code, great performance metrics, but 6 months later, it's still not in production. This might sound familiar. The block is almost never your system. The block is organizational process and project manager assumptions because product and project managers are still using legacy software as a service or ERP mental models. So I'm going to compare some frameworks that are available, going to identify some failure patterns and spot some red flags with the goal that by the end, you'll be able to increase your odds of getting your AI into production in your organization. So why traditional project manager playbooks don't fit AI? So the normal playbooks are those related to software as a service, SaaS projects, most notably, where traditional project manager frameworks are built around the idea of trying to get a predictable and testable software into production. And AI doesn't really fit that pattern. An example might be something simple like what Colin was talking about earlier. You put in with the SaaS software, you would put into an input A, it's always going to give output B. And AI doesn't do that necessarily. For example, if you've got a categorization for different text, like say it's user tickets, support tickets, something like that, you could have the identical text from one support ticket to the next, get two different categorizations, maybe based on some very, very subtle different changes in context. And because of that, that makes it really difficult to pass by some of the roadblocks that happen inside an organization where they're going to say, but why did your system not give the predictable and testable output we were expecting? And it's because AI is different. And AI requirements also evolve as we learn what the data can actually do. So it's not like we know necessarily based on all of the data that's being put into the system that you're building, we don't know that the only possible outputs are going to be A, B, or C. It can be all sorts of things. So, for example, if you were creating a system that's going to create categorizations and you are like, give me 5, you may find that when you put all the data into AI, you may find that actually there's 12 categorizations that the system can fairly well put it into. And so putting all this into context, traditional project managers, they panic at stuff like this. They panic at evolving scope But with scope, AI is a signal that system is working and it's potentially cross-departmental, whereas in traditional ways we've been looking at software, scope is failure. Um, Bunch of other differences, but including training and documentation requirements and blah, blah, blah. But those are just some of the big ones. Uh, so those are examples of when your product or project manager is thinking the way they always have and not thinking about AI. So what I want to talk about now is the rare occasion when your product or project manager, they know that AI is different, and so they've gone out and sought out a different framework to utilize how they're going to organize the project that you're building. And there's about a dozen or so big companies that have released their different frameworks. Uh, in my opinion, not one of them yet has kind of nailed it exactly right. Uh, but I wanted to bring up three of the big ones. First one would be Accenture. So if you're not familiar with Accenture, Accenture is a consulting firm that is a sort of business first consulting firm. They're generally hiring MBAs straight out of college, for example. They're going to teach those guys and young women some how Accenture does what they do. They're going to, it's great training, it's great stuff, but it's coming at these workflows, these projects from very much an MBA point of view, not a developer point of view. So inside their AI framework, if you were to go and read it, like I unfortunately had to do, you're going to find that it's mostly about the maturity of the organization. It's going to be about training people on AI, getting them familiar with AI, making change management easier because everybody in the organization is bought in to the vision and to the potential of AI. But this really does lean heavy into what Accenture, what their interest is and what their lens is, which is they want to sell the programs to these big companies, and they'll charge hundreds of thousands of dollars and sometimes more for these programs to kind of teach and coach and get the organization ready for this sort of thing. In my opinion, it's often unnecessary. It certainly isn't the biggest priority. Google and Amazon, both of their frameworks are fairly similar. Google focuses on infrastructure readiness, and Amazon focuses on data readiness. And based on what it is that they're selling to these big organizations, might give you a pretty good clue as to why they care about those respectively. Obviously, Google's going to try to sell a lot of infrastructure to the big companies, and AWS is very interested in you putting a ton of data onto their servers. Last one is IBM. Last big one that I was going to bring up here, at least. There's like I said, nearly a dozen more. IBM. Uh, it talks about like governance and documentation and compliance artifacts and all this other stuff that. Well, IBM not exactly one of those companies that builds fast and breaks things. That sort of leans into their past experience and how they've worked and perhaps part of their success. It's certainly not moving at the speed of AI. And to me, it sort of reminds me of like being I can imagine most developers, when faced with IBM's requirements, would be like a cop in one of those really bad buddy cop movies where they just want to arrest people and they don't want to do the paperwork. And IBM's there going, no, 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 you need to do the paperwork. So anyway, with all these frameworks, each has its own lens, each has its own priorities. There's different things that they ignore. None of them, I feel, are prioritizing the developer and development. Um, and so I think that it's a big miss, and it's also a big credit to this group actually to be hearing from you guys sometimes weekly and sometimes monthly what your challenges are and what you're able to build. Beer awaits, everybody. Sorry, I'm going to go just a couple more minutes. Um, Project management frameworks, they do share three universal assumptions. They want a well-defined business problem. They, which makes a lot of sense. Like even if there's going to be scope creep with an AI system, you still want to start with a very specific, well-defined business problem that the system is going to solve. By having that, it's much more easier to get the buy-in. You don't want to be told this is our highest priority business problem, solve it with this AI system, and you turn in your AI system and it solves these three other problems, but not that one. That's going to be a real big hindrance to be able to get into production. Second thing is all of these frameworks, including the eight more that I didn't talk about in the last slide, they all are expecting a certain amount of data readiness and data clarity. Uh, like I said, with the AWS framework, for example, they're much more about data quantity over data quality, but they all are talking about data and how it's needed to certain degrees. Uh, and so, yes, it's going to be something that you're going to be asked about, and you will need to defend with your AI system to be able to say to your project manager and the other people who are going to either allow your system to get into production or not, be able to defend the data that is feeding that system and how the system is using it. Last thing is they all depend on cross-functional collaboration to avoid failure. And what that is talking about is basically that role that your product manager has, or even a business analyst in your organization has, which is bridging between the administration and the rest of the business and the developer and the developer team. So you got to have that in place. And so if you're find that you're developing in a silo and you're unable or to communicate with or hear from the business side of your business, then it's doomed to fail. So all these assumptions are not wrong. They all require active developer participation. And yeah, so if you can make sure that these three assumptions um, uh, uh, are being prioritized by you as a developer, there's a much more likelihood that your organization should accept your AI development into production. So some red flags to look out for. I'll skip through these as quickly as I can to avoid going long. You want to watch for product managers or project managers who demand complete requirements before any code. So, for example, if you've heard the organization wants this something to be developed and weeks and then months are going by and it's not being assigned to you, it's not getting into your Scrum meetings, then that's a pretty good sign that your PM is using the old ways of doing things. What they're doing is spending weeks and months, perhaps, doing stakeholder analysis, doing stakeholder interviews, gathering requirements, and documenting everything so that they can give you that same old Bible that you might have received in the past, so that the first version or the first version plus a little bit of iteration is going to be able to solve what it is the business problem that the project has been designed to solve. But it's not necessary, or I should say, it's not as necessary with AI initiatives. So just watch out for that, and watch out for PMs who insist on one perfect predetermined solution, because AI is non-deterministic. So it's going to be imperfect, and sort of part of its value is in those imperfections. Watch for PMs who want enterprise infrastructure before validation. If you find out that they are buying tons more uh, Azure tools and doing tons of data cleaning and wanting to do all sorts of things for the infrastructure before you've even built anything, it's a sign that that it's not going to work, and they're still thinking about things in the old uh, uh, PM playbooks. Um, so if you see any of these things, watch these patterns early and guide the business towards some discovery thinking. The biggest tell in all of these things is that the legacy software mental models are being applied to AI work. So just make sure that if nothing has changed between the way it used to be done and the way it's happening now, that is a pretty good sign that it's not going to work. So we've covered why traditional PM approaches they break AI projects, reviewed some frameworks that try to fix this, but some of the frameworks still assume a SaaS mental model. So in my opinion, I think developers see the reality in the data and the discovery cycles. I think you guys are are able to develop faster than ever. You're able to experiment and do some amazing things with AI. And because you are better acquainted with the solutions, you are also have a much more potential to be able to identify the legacy problems that previously may not have been solvable, but now because of AI are. So because of that, yeah, I'm very interested in hearing from you guys. Perhaps you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatnot, because I know we're out of time. Um, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, of course, on top of that. But I'm really interested in hearing from a developer point of view as to what types of blind spots and things that you're seeing from your organizations and the way that they're approaching the project frameworks, because I'm very interested now and have started working on a framework that I think will be much more likely to get AI projects into production. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. So this our